Yes, greetings in the best of salutations. I'm going to try to see if I could present this information here to the best of my ability. So we can go ahead and make this thing happen. This is where I am, this present time. Hopefully, there is no, you don't detect, and you may detect some sense of frustration. But I realized that an unfulfilled expectation leads to frustration. So here we go with this here. Now, since the 2010, March 17th, I believe, created this nonprofit organization called Common Humanity Mission. The original board members were Lorraine, Joyce Bay, Redmond Bonds, and Eric Rack. So, and what I saw that there was a need to help people primarily to deal with all types of setbacks, whatever they may be. You know. And what's the primary intent? Because of my experience with setbacks. And in those experiences which I have encountered, you know, due to mismanagement of funds, acting out on psychological imbalances, accessibility to wealth, not having access to wealth to support, yes, what you do. And so, excuse me. And I went through many programs, not many, but maybe a few, dealing with my forms of addiction. I will stop for a minute and do it again. I'm used to, you know, making some money. And I thought that it would be official based upon my experience that I could intervene on behalf of others if I see that they're going in and out and struggling without having any grounding. So I was introduced by me. I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Brown, Kenneth Brown, Deacon Brown. Because I was running a program, executive director of the program, I mean, assistant executive director of the program. And because I came through it. And this gentleman came in, he was 62 years old, and I was younger than him, saying, how is this young fella going to help me? Well, his life changed. And, and all is well. So, I mean, sometime later down the road, yeah, I was going through some problems and he helped me. We have to treat people right. So, yeah, and because I realized that the youth being haunted by the adult, because the adult is being haunted by their youth, by their past. One is overriding, dominating the other. So as this idea started to evolve and put on paper, the help of Barry Lenore and Black started by Calvin Roloff. So I reached out and Brown introduced me to Mr. Lenore, and he helped me to formulate the paperwork to become a legitimate 501c3. Met some good people along the way. And then the brother by the name of Michael Folks allowed me to start my program there at one of his houses, his apartment complex. I had a business there, and also I had a transitional facility there. And just reaching out and doing some things and bringing some people in through word of mouth. Doing a lot of footwork, groundwork, just Raglan, he was doing some paperwork for me. In the rain, Joyce Bay. So then as I created that facility, that facility was there and was helping people. I was promoting what is called the maturation process. And that consists of understanding, tolerance, temperance, confidence, and respect. Yes. And then all of a sudden, parted from that facility that I had, and I found myself, having another setback. So this is in my heart. I understand it, but I want it. I want it. I want to be successful so bad. I wanted the success of my idea to come into fruition. I have interacted with many people and showed them my business, my program. I can't say my business plan, but I have shown people my business plan, but my program. And I've come across people who have said, man, who are you? And don't have no degree for you to come up with such writing. That can be very insulting as well as humiliating. So I continued to move on. Actually, I found myself in a homeless shelter. And after I created the program that was to help people to deal with setbacks, then I find myself going through never setback. So that was fine. And, still struggling, man. Mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. Fighting, man. Still fighting. Work my way out of that situation. Hooked up with a gentleman who I had met sometime before, because I have gave presentations, what they call ordained minister, preached powerful messages, and gave lectures. not mainstream, you know, of it's not, if you don't have the exposure, not considered to be mainstream, then you know people are more reluctant to accept you. You know, that's why accept the criticism from the criticized. That fits. So he said to me that, man, you can come up to a certain area because I was staying in Washington D.C. And he said, well, you come up here in Baltimore and stay. Came up through the help of, I remember Bishop Wells. I can get him connected me with a place that he had up there, a rooming house, and I stayed there. Not to mention being a part of a Universal African American People Organization, church, church came in place where I was the, I think, regional director or something. Yeah, Baltimore. I can't recall my title, but you know, I had people under me. A lot of people I've engaged and I have come in contact with, you know, it may not hold value to anyone else because it's not mainstream. And there's a lot that's going on in the society where there are those who have done things that connect with people, but it's not mainstream, so therefore it's not of value. Yes. So where I am now, and my concerns, I'm still having um, problems with financial support, making the right connections, still interacting with people who are in the what I think in the, maybe the political field they are, and I don't necessarily mention names, but you know, thinking that they could, you know, offer some assistance. You know, it's like historically, it's like when the slaves got emancipated and they looked toward the slaves that were already free to help them. And they couldn't help them because they were still, you know, still going through the residuals of psychological slavery themselves, you know, and the words of Harriet Tubman, she said she could have freed up Moors than they were slaves. You know? So it's like, you know, we on this quest for to still prove our legitimacy and saying that I am the representative of the, or when leadership such as Laney and Douglas, that they wanted to be the representative of the people. But it's like, but still, and in one representation, you don't put anyone else, you don't obscure anyone else, or you don't assassinate no one else's character to get to a position of saying, I have made it. You know, there was a challenge of two friends, and one became a congressman, and he, you know, he used his private activity to boast or push him up in the position of being, you know, elected of Congress as a congressman. You know. Very treacherous, man. Trying, and then the person becomes celebrated. Very challenging indeed in this society in which we live in, and it gives new meaning to the word invisible man, Ralph Ellison. I'm visible at the expense of making you invisible. I am visible, crying out for attention to prove the legitimacy. You know, I take your life. You are nothing to me. You know, you're gone. But I'm visible. I got made a name for myself, but in the worst of ways. It's almost like you know, Roman thinking when they look for a hero, not downplaying anyone. You know, they look for a hero. They ain't worrying about his character. You know what I'm saying? They just accept anybody. So a hero. But yes, so I'm thinking now and trying to still solicit, find support, common humanity mission. We say that our motto is to promote the value of self-worth, because I see that there is a lack of self-worth. People want to find a place of belonging, and that's natural. So, but the value, the value of self-worth, I think Dr. Guru talks about low self-esteem. But I said there was, need for low self-esteem or bigger esteem. We hold each other in high esteem. Esteem is an estimation. Esteem is an estimation, or like close proximity. So, it's like you're aiming for a target. And the aim is accountability. That's the aim. Accountability. There is no accountability. There's moral culture decline. It's recidivism. That's what people call sin. Sin. Yeah, and Hebrew sin shatan, to miss the mark, lack of accountability. But once you get the accountability, then you come into complete civility, citizen, global citizens. And then therefore you should be at peace. As you see, Common Humanity Mission, the help of Robert Folks in the logo, and another brother, I can't call his name, help of Mr. Ragland. He connected me with the gentleman. And still some logistics, financial logistics that I have to work. But as you see, the idea is mine. You see the period, 3 colors of the earth. Red, but it's transparent, oval shape, or disc shape, or oblong, whatever you want to call it, but it's a disc spinning. And on top of it is the square. The focus, the passion, focus. The circle is for harmony. And the square is for justice. The passion that one has for harmony. And justice. A panoramic view that is planet on the earth, communicating with precision a clearer image to the world. The focus, the harmony, the justice. Spinning, evolving around. Sitting on the square, Kaaba, on top. The purpose of the square is not to take more than what is needed. Communicating with precision, a clearer image to the world through 5 channels of communication. One is understanding. The other is tolerance. The other is temperament/temperament, maybe 5.5. The other is confidence and respect. There's an end result. You got the understanding is designed to restore social credibility, because one's credibility is to be restored to be a credible person, a person of integrity. That means you're being about your word. And then the next component is the maturation process again, is tolerance. Yes, deal with capacity training, but it is designed to readdress social diversity. Moving from a persecuted minority to a privileged majority. Because when inspiration comes down, one's aspiration goes up. And then we deal with temperance/temperament to control one's attitude, designed to revise social coherency. Said revise. The brain cell at its best is designed to be productive, and it was constructed to think correctly, to be coherent. And And the fourth component of this, communicate with precision and clear image to the world, these 5.5 channels of the maturation process, as I call it, is confidence. And that is designed to replenish social continuity because one's way of life has been interrupted. One tries to dominate and control the means of productivity. You interrupt the harmonious, remember the focus, the basis, the pyramid point of harmony. That's square, the justice is on top of the justice. You're spinning, you have interrupted that continuity of that flow. Dr. Du Bois spoke of it, mentioned it, so associated with Dr. Bois, mean that it's so deals with reparations, because if you interrupted the way of life, we come and help. People come and help and build the country, help you build your country. How people do business with one another, how people interact with one another. So that's what's most important, is one's effective communication skills, business skills, diction skills, vocabulary skills, interaction skills, social skills, journaling skills. Yes, interrupted. So you can see how people, in another form, when you are in a lack, a negative self-identity interrupts, drugs interrupt, toxins interrupt. Yes, the continuity of the flow. So people don't want to deal with reality. This is their way to deal with it. So we want to communicate a clear image to the world. Yeah. Social, cultural science. Who we are and what we do, a community. So through the utilization of social literacy and life skills development, Common Humanity Mission comes to an individual, family, social health, human service organization. The organization primarily engaged in providing a wide variety of ways to help assist individuals and families going through social health crisis, illness, and other setbacks. Let's look at a little bit of this here, if I may. Because we have a 5-star approach: universal, comprehensive, conscientious, and holistic. Yeah. Yeah, man. So it's social intervention model. The social intervention model to becoming practitioners of social maturity. As it pertains to our feelings, our thoughts, our attitude, our communication, our language, our actions, our activity, as we learn reason from the premise of conversation, as well as reason with progression rather than regression. It is easier to agree than disagree. However, we can learn a lot from conversation. We don't see eye to eye. We can listen. Another thing, listening skills. Talk rationally and looking for a rationale behind it. Also, one's intentions will be questioned for the sake of clarity in the manner and the way in which we are expressing ourselves in conversation. Learning how to reason from the premise of conversation. You could tell in one's writing and how he writes in his rhetoric. But also it must line up with his or her behavior of the individual when it comes to her developing his or her identity. Unfortunately, we must learn to reason from a premise of conversation, not a faulty premise. Because remember when I said earlier about you are visible at the expense of making someone invisible is very obscure. Because we all must face the consequences of our actions, whether good or bad. And you see in the society in which we live, through medium press and television, if you have made it in the mainstream, you are more visible, you are more value. You know what I'm saying? While those who may have make a transition, they are more value, but that doesn't matter to a higher being. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't matter to a higher being, because the higher being knows what's in the person's heart. It's materialism. Unfortunately, when persons respectfully either tend to shy away from disagreements or emotionally lose it, persons are not in control of their emotions when it comes to the cultivation of exchange and conversation. It seems to them to be, unfair and disrespectful. Because when you're in the wilderness, you're unfined, untamed, and cultivated. That's how it is, and even when we interacting one with another. So one could see it as being disrespectful. One doesn't know how to really communicate. One with another, in the manner and way in which we have communicated is has been accustomed. If you have been disrespected, and you are been obscured and you are invisible, then you want to be visible. You want to be seen, and you will express it in a manner, in a way that is very inappropriate, and even in one's attire as well. Then therefore it gives you value. The flip side is that we become an enemy to ourselves. So one who's aware of that is a greater challenge, because he or she has to deal with that particular uncultivated, untamed, unrefined person with a sense of dignity and integrity as well, even if he or she does not deal with you in that manner, in that way. Yes. So, deal with the monologue, but it's all about the dialogue. So the tempers and the temperament of the attitude of the person, as I said, the third component, maturation, is temperament/temperament of the attitude, control the attitude. Because the problem is not the problem, it's the attitude that we have about the problem. Persons bring the attitude to the conversation. It could be constructive, as well as destructive. So we want to be coherent rather than incoherent. Yes. And there must be some training that goes on to an individual, friend, parent, or business. One must learn not to take it personal or allow someone to take you off your square. As you've seen earlier, square on as the model of common humanity. You see the square, take you off the square. Yeah, and if you get out of shape, you get upset. And because of either the idea was arranged and expressed in a tone or a manner, and time deemed inappropriate, about being balanced. That's why the spinning is the balance. On balancing itself. So yes, and being balanced, equally justified with regards and respect for the other party. And that is contingent on the level of one's social maturity. That's why I say one must become anything of a practitioner of social maturity. Understanding the other person that you are in a conversation with. One must have the wherewithal by displaying the wisdom of discernment, discretion. Remember, we are not to be perceived as a threat to each other. That's important. Not to be perceived as a threat to one another. Yes, we must not make any excuses. We say we're a product of the environment, but we are a product of the decisions that we make. We want to gain, the knowledge because knowledge applied becomes intelligence. Because we having this conversation exchange, reasoning from the premise conversation, you must have a true premise, not a premise that is based on fallacy, with that you are dominating and you are more visible than the other individual, while the other individual is seen to be invisible, of less value. Yes. So yes, we must continue to promote, you know, the value of self-worth. And I think that we need to do that through problem-solving skills. You know, it says that remember, pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, while optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. And a conversational exchange. We must avoid putting down others' ideas as well as beliefs that are merely systems of operation. Doing so, we are working as social health engineers, countering unhealthy social engineering. That's all we say, that common humanity operate as social health engineers. Yes. So we need to spend less time devaluing each other and replenishing the continuity of our confidence in cooperating one with another. In learning about anything as well as self, you will come to know that time equals task. There was a study that was dealing with certain ethnic groups, and how one spent more time studying, how others spent other time doing something else, and they did better on the test. And the test is designed to see how to process information. So therefore, the task must be synchronized, meaning that there must first be established a mutual understanding. Not of understanding comes consciousness, and establishing a mutual industry, because we are here as to be industrious, to be productive. And that's mutual, that's respectful, of understanding, and out of understanding, I said, come consciousness, and be aware, be aware of our potential and tap into it, and that potential become a realization, real. And the first step of change, and change is a product of human effort. Awareness is the first step of change, and change, the product of human effort, resulting to a higher synthesis. Yes, yeah. Of mutual respect one for another. And time must be economized. This is a conversational exchange, not in shouldn't be in monologue, but in dialogue, one with another. And creating unnecessary expenditures, a waste of time, because the substance that we have in this universe should be done to benefit humanity, not to be dominated and controlled by a few who determine who and gets what, and leave it at that. So, not waste, unnecessary expenditure of time of being untruthful, dishonest, and unfriendly. Have you ever been on a receiving end of someone else's tirade or put down? You must come to know and practice how valuable and useful, time is in respectable words, because we live in a word oppressive environment. We must have, be very, create the language of affection, and be very effective about it. Realize we must work with what we do have and build on. It's called, I think Dr. King said something about maximizing the minimum rather than minimizing the maximum. Because to be not work with what you not respect and value what you do have, it creates an infectious disease, and it spreads, because circumstances makes us other than ourselves, and we reach outside of ourselves. That's the first sign of deception. So intent is important. Intent is judged by your action. So we come to a point in our conversation and exchange when it becomes offensive, what we say. That's a trigger and a trap. Very offensive. So we must be made aware of misplaced aggression. We must be made aware of misplaced aggression and emotional traps. person that is mentally deranged has become mentally incapacitated to be able to reason. Yes, he don't see. He's unable to reason. So, and he becomes emotional displaced, which means he takes out his negative. He sometimes even on himself, on others. And that's acting out. I'm no doctor, but it's there's psychological imbalances. And not to mention there are chemicals that people take in their body, and to remember I said that I think it was Elijah Muhammad, Farrakhan said Elijah Muhammad said that the brain cells is created to think correctly. So we must have the correct interpretation of this cosmos, this universe, that they are in harmony with one another. Yeah. So then we have to deal with the logic and the emotion. There must be balance. We must merge the two, because people can be very highly emotional, less logical. I remember there was a story about a gentleman who was running for office, and they took him into a certain area of a different ethnic group, and he was warned not to go in this particular area, town hall meeting, and he was saying this particular individual is not from here, but due to misplaced aggression and emotional displacement, they were highly emotional, even though he was right. You know what I'm saying? They just couldn't see he was right. That's what you call cognitive dissonance as well. So they couldn't see that he was right. So yeah, man, we have to merge the logic with the emotion. So we must respectfully come to an agreement. Say, even if we disagree, but you look at the word itself, meant and agreed and like almost disrespecting the agreement in a complementary sense. Yes, complementary sense. That we're here to complement one another. There is something that could be too much here, but when you offset it, you complement one another. So, we respectfully explain why. Here's why we must do our best to resist sarcasm. And that's a challenge. And and history has proved that the brothers that people were enslaved, that their sarcasm or their comedy was a means and a manner way to express their anger or their frustration. And through sarcasm, it prevented them from physically attacking the individual that put them in the situation that they're in. So comedy, yeah, that's true building. But you could talk, but nowadays become very sensitive. At least they create a field of comedy, but sometimes that's when we deal with being censored now, in what one say and what we do, and they deal with freedom of expression. So yes, but it's still not good, man, because to assassinate one publicly and character publicly is almost like akin to murder. That's something that really need to work on. And then derogatory comments and even degrading images and pictures of people, it's not good, neither, toward each other and one another. So that will, we must do our best getting our point across without crossing over the line, and respecting one, thinking about the greater good for and of the relationship, if that's what one is, want. And some people don't want to have a good relationship with you, and, because they may not have a good relationship with themselves, or if that relationship is good, it is contingent upon, it could be fake, it could be faulty, it could be phony, and it's to their convenience at the expense of making you inconvenient, because they themselves have been inconvenient and are being inconvenient and do not know how to address and deal with their own inconvenience. They are uncomfortable with it. So what they are uncomfortable with is a rebirth. Huh? Yes, a rebirth redemption, being redeemed. Yes, you know, giving birth to a child could be, I don't know, could be painful. That's the rebirthing. Yes, so we must use statements or points of expression to communicate, how we feel and what we think, what we need and what is needed as a prerequisite, as an obligation, commitment, and devotion in respectful way, manner. And you will find resolution. So we must strengthen our resolve. And this is a manner way how we forge healthy, long-term relationship. So we must work on our interaction skills. Yes. And when there is balance of the logic and emotion, when there is balance, understanding speaks clearly. The key to life, the social life, is family and those who participate in it find joy, and those who don't find joy in misery. So the core to social life is family and man and way. We cultivate, communicate as a family, our humanity. That's love for me, the manner and way in which we communicate as a family, our humanity. We know we're going to come to learn that children are the extension of our parents' social relationship and what is being spread abroad. Knowing that character is the outgrowth of one's humanity and in those relationships as well. Sometimes one statement could, sound argumentative. For example, when someone always reminds you about something that, a parent could remind a child about something that they may have a different tone or a different voice in a manner and way in which the words are arranged. So then therefore it leads to a lack of preparedness, being ready, for the question, or being questioned. We must remind ourselves not to take it personally. What is being questioned is one's intention. What is vitally important is clarity. So temperance and temperament are also important as well as which means we are respectfully listening and paying attention to another key word, pay. That's what you pay for not paying attention. Attention, as act. We're not paying attention to at the tension. The tension. We're not paying attention to the tension. The tension, because we could agree on the surface, but beneath the surface we're not paying attention to the tension that is in ourselves, the tension that you have with others. And that is due to that could be the envy, that could be the jealousy, that could be the hatred, that could be the self-negative identity that a person have about him or herself, not paying attention to the tension. Yes, that's stressful. Oh boy. Everything that someone says does not necessarily solicit a response. Yes. So which renders one to be socially coherent. Yeah. But there is no need to act out disrespectfully and indignant and hostile manner, which means one is unsettled and immature in his emotions, as well as intellectually, and yes, socially. Someone said he was not meant to be respectful, yet it could have been honest and sincere, yet alone truthful. So we come to look at it as retention and developing cognitive skills. For example, if a parent reminds a child about their homework, that child starts to feel pressured and persecuted and could become resentful, which will lead to either being disrespectful or to feel or to internalize hate, self-hatred, and distance him or herself from those genuinely and truly care about their well-being. Needless to say, the greatest distance between us all is a misunderstanding. We all have to confront our deeds. We can distance ourselves all day long. We all got to confront our deeds. So then what is needed, as I deal with problem solving skills and reading from the premise of conversation. When it comes to communicating with precision and clearer image to the world, the 5 channels of communication: understanding, tolerance, temperance, confidence, and respect. And comprehensive, conscientious, holistic, and progressive, the 5-star approach. This. So listening skills, listening to each other's point of view, the part of the philosophy, a point that is in view, within range. So we learn to reason from the premise of conversation, and reason within reason within reason. Because we are government within government. We are self within self. We are community within a community, within everything. Well, within range, this is connected to anthropology, how persons interpret their reality. Yes. All actions and attitudes are judged by interpretation of intentions. Now, let us be clear that the truth is the cause that affects one's reality. Now, that's both psychosocial, that's a physiological and psychological adjustment as it pertains to having a social, healthy, conversational exchange. So therefore, social intervention and interaction is the cause. It is a noble cause that consists of integrity, honor, dignity, confidence, and respect. So being a good listener is a way of showing respect and understand the other person's perspective. Yes, that's a challenge. Perception and perspectives that makes it more likely that he or she will reciprocate the same for you. So focus on what is being said, meaning develop, and what develop. And things being said, meaning develop. What is being developed? What is evolving? And what can be done to find resolution, being solution oriented. So it's about the orientation and resolve. Remember, character is the outgrowth of one's humanity. It's about character resolve. That's the quest. You are less likely to beat a person at his own game, playing by his set of rules. Yet if you have character resolve along with a moral conscience and sincerity, a way will be made without doubt. That's the challenge. That's the challenge. It's a personal challenge. When you cannot, I'm going to repeat that. You are less likely to beat a person at his own game. And for me, the only game is confidence. You never destroy the confidence of the child. By his set of rules. Yet if you have character resolve, the challenge, along with a moral conscious challenge, in sincerity, a way will be made without doubt, which means an environment of misgivings, an environment of doubt in yourself and your ability will be eliminated. Repeat the key points to other persons to assure and improve that you are listening. You then calmly reply, I heard what you said. Finally, doing so, your best. Finally, in doing this, you're giving your best. And when you do your best, you stay calm, never trying to compose undisturbed person, peace, and your composure, like putting together a great composition of music in a conversational exchange, because what we have to learn is a rhythmatic, harmonious expression. Remember, we are learning to reason from the premise of conversation and dialogue rather than monologue. Rather, one will acknowledge, access, and apply, for the Paul say, accept that there is a lot of deep-seated feeling we have to accept deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and insecurity that a person insecurity that people have, so they will try to compensate for that by being unreasonable, irrational, disrespectful, disruptive, obnoxious, obsessive, and aggressive with you as well as each other. This must be addressed. When we participate in monologue rather than dialogue, and finding resolve. And understand you can't beat a person at his own game when he set the rules. But if you have character resolve along with moral conscience and sincerity, a way will be made without doubt. But when we acknowledge, accept that there is a lot of deep-seated feelings of inadequacy about self and insecurities of self, that people and in one another, that people have to compensate for that. And this is where violence comes into play. They will be unreasonable, irrational, disrespectful, disruptive, obnoxious, obsessive, and aggressive with you as with self, as well as with others. They pride on being loud. And Nita Fuller will call it external therapy and what they wear. Oh, man. This is something to be understood and taught, passed down from generation after generation, generations to come. Taught how to nurture and cherish when it evolves, that is, when it involves in our social interactions, skills, and conversation exchange and engagement, in the evolving process of maturity, growth, and development, of understanding, tolerance, temperament, confidence, and respect, learning how to peacefully and respectfully reason from the premise of conversation in a manner and a way one will become accustomed to a win-win situation. That's what it's called, righteousness. Hostility, indecent behavior, and arrogance of attitude will be so far removed from our conversation, from our interaction. It is what expected from each other in a conversational exchange. It is the reason from the premise of conversation, as well as reason for progression, not regression, that our attentions will be rightly guided as a person, family, community, and as a book. And our nature, that we be the representation of our personification. That's solidified. That is social solidarity. That we be the representation of our personification. Social solidarity. That's the respect. So the best thing one can do is to keep the conversation on track. I know sometimes we feel angry and passionate about something and may carry a lot of baggage of dissatisfaction, frustration, and disappointment. They need to know a mature person manages the conversation. He or she knows better, do better, become better, and it is come better at it in thought, deed, and action. They need to know a mature person manage the conversation. He or she knows better to do better, excuse me, and become better at it. Excuse me for that. And thought, deed, and action. This is why you never argue with a fool and put a fool in a position of power or have foolish conversations. That is based on nothing, a fallacy, obscurity, which means, you obscuring someone else, that you be more visible than the next individual, and you minimize the visibility of others, And you minimize the invisibility of others by impairing his or her vision, because vision stems from the source of one's thinking. So if you look at media, press, and television, are they impairing one's vision? Yes. And then you're unable to hear because something is already in your ear, and you're unable to see because something is already in your eye. And someone else comes, you don't listen, you don't hear, nor do you see. It's been turned over, on automatic pilot. Some call it in the religious city, reprobate mind. They're saying nothing from nothing leaves nothing. It's about substance. Yet if you argue with a fool about foolish things, it would be difficult for those on the outside to be able to distinguish who is the fool. I understand that one, sure. There is also a need to know, never put a fool in a fool, inconsiderate, unkind, disconnected, unsympathetic person in a position of authority. People will start to think that's the model to follow. A need to know, never put a fool who is inconsiderate, unkind, disconnected, unsympathetic in a position of authority. People will start to think that's the model to follow. We must know that respect goes beyond difficult conversations, so we must be as helpful as we can. The understanding kind of manageable, mature, respectful toward each other, so that we can advance human excellence. The journey to community life is the journey to our original human excellence. A development of the intellect when it comes to, and the betterment of humanity when it comes to parenting, family, friends, communities, associates, business, humanity alike. By establishing a win-win situation in our conversational exchange and in our interactions of learning how to reason from the premise of conversation, as well as reasoning with progression rather than regression, agreeing to a higher level of expectation from each other when it comes to human excellence, development of the intellect, the balance of logic and emotion, feeling, thought, attitude, language, and communication, communicating with precision, a clearer image to the world, common humanity mission, through the utilization of social literacy and life development skills. That's the heart of the matter. Our services and the people we serve. Students of matriculation, abandoned, neglected, rejected, dejected, and despised, ex-offenders, homelessness. Menu of services we offer: root cause analysis, character resolve, conflict resolution, conciliatory healing. Is our social health model task, as I said earlier, communicating precision through five channels: communication, understanding perceived susceptibility, the task and the effort, tolerance, advantages and disadvantages of it, the perceived susceptibility of the social health model. Comes to tolerance, see the result in readdressing diversification of one's aspirations. Because when inspiration comes down, one's aspiration goes up, and one feels disrespected is because he or she has not reached his aspirations. An unfulfilled expectation leads to frustration. Behind it is a spirit of deception. We perceive severity, which means sometimes we deal with an imaginary hurt that's not there. And then the time and the temperance and the social, the health motivation. We want to be healthily motivated because we want to revive social coherence. Because we were coherent at one time. Revive is like a resuscitation. And then the energy is in the confidence, and that's perceived benefits. But sometimes the manner in which we see benefits. This the best body of knowledge is creation. That's a benefit, but then there are those who will use you as who will benefit from you at the expense that you are downplaying others. It's like, for example, some would say that they're about reform, but only thing that they are reforming is corruption. They are reforming in a manner and way which to make someone else feel, disconnect others in a manner and way from you. And if you are disconnected from the accessibility of wealth, I mean, how do you feel in the world of an abundance? Then you can see that this may be a route, the way that you go to get it. You may participate in an activity that causes more hurt, harm, and good because it benefits you at the expense of exploiting others. Yes, and that creates a blockage, and there's a blockage, there is a disease. Because there is, I always like to say a term, it's a term, Islamic term called a day of reckoning. I like that because, one's accomplishments and limitations would be revealed. Accomplishments, limitations, and failure. Some don't like the word failure. But if we fall short of accountability, that's a problem. So then we deal with the energy as well. Then with the open-mindedness, the open-mindedness, because when the light hits the plant, it opens up. Then there are those who are closed-mindedness. They can't think outside the box. This problem where people think they have some esoteric knowledge on something and no one else knows anything. So, or when one doesn't understand and respect another person's perspective, that's you just close your mind, you shut down. Then you're very, narrow-minded. Could be seen either way. It could be, a focus on things. But narrow also can mean that you don't know how to broaden your perspective. Human nature. We deal with human nature. Then we deal with in the middle model, of course. Now I'm dealing with the perceived barriers because we have to break perceived generational barriers. Because I said earlier that the youth is being hunted by the adult and the adult is being hunted by their youth. Perceived barriers, I think S.B. Fuller said one time, race is not a problem. He said the problem that, what the term called blacks, which is conceptual, it's not factual. He says that we don't understand capitalism. So we want to reclaim this social solidarity. Yes. As I stated earlier about my 5-star approach, I always miss one. It's progressive. What I'm doing when I'm talking about common humanity mission, utilizing when it comes to developing the social health service and dealing with development of social life skills, as I would like to, deal with the youth outreach program, the Broken Spirit program, in the Life Rediscovery Center, to open up a Life Rediscovery Center. And we have this 5-star approach because you don't get them at the youth and their spirit becomes broken, then they have to discover life again. And as I said, the 5 populations, and which we're going to be dealing with is students of matriculation, because sometimes students, they want to change careers, and then they can come in and help and change their career. They can deal with those that have been abandoned, neglected, dejected, and despised. They can help the ex-offenders. They can help the homelessness. This would be people who will reside in the Life Rediscovery Center. I would like to open up, I'd like to get some money to support that. So that's what I solicited for, soliciting for. And then we offer the menu, would be root cause analysis. The people who develop the analytical skills, character resolve, because character is the outgrowth of one's humanity. That was, we strengthen their resolve. Conflict resolution. We can't conflict or image, because we have to see ourselves in a positive way, in a positive manner. Then we communicate that. Then we offer conciliatory healing. That's overcoming animosity and distrust that leads to anxiety attacks. And then we deal once again with a esteem building. Yeah. So the approach is progressive. Understanding the social health model, the whole social health engineer provides, and let me see, providers are, we call social engineer providers because we're operating as social health engineers. physically inspired to prepare the groundwork, because we want to create a groundswell, but a grounding, like a receptacle, a ground receptacle of synergy of energy. The groundwork for academic freedom that helps to aid and assist the social transformation, conciliatory healing process of being progressively understood. Remember, reason with progression, forward thinking. Then the universal approach, tolerance approach, the social health engineer protectors. We got providers, then we got the protectors. It's the intellectually enlightened to build upon the work for intellectual independence that helps aid and assist the social transition of the conciliatory healing process of being universally tolerant. Then we have the holistic temperament approach of the social health engineer preservers. These are the preservers. We have the providers, we have the protectors, and we have the preservers. Are emotionally encouraged to further aid to the work for financial stability that helps aid and assist the social transcending of conciliatory healing process of being holistically less temperamental. Yes, less temperamental. Now, these are things that have already been done at a high rate of success by Common Humanity Mission. Let's be clear with that. Rather, I'm just letting you know that this had transpired. So then we deal with the fourth approach, the comprehensive confidence approach of social health engineer prevalence. Is to spiritually endowed or spiritually empowered. We'll prevail. We will prevail. Empowered to seal the deal of the work that is the finished product. The finished product, because you notice that humans always look at the end product, and therefore they see the name. Because for the most part, it's difficult for people to get involved, but they want to see the finished. They get involved when they see the results. The finished product of healing and the assist social transferring of conciliatory healing process of being comprehensively confident in the operation and the multiplication of the work and producing social engineers. Yes. So the conscientious approach of the totality of the mindset that deals with the mindset of the social health engineers of Common Humanity Mission encompasses the embodiment of social transparency. We want to be transparent in what we do. It embodies the transparency of conciliatory healing, overcoming animosity and distrust in the healing process. Because we realize that we're not saying that the damage never existed. We're just saying that don't let the damage control you. Far too many times we let the damage control you, and we act out these social, psychological, social imbalances, whatever word we want to use. It's an imbalance. And the healing process of being conscientiously respected, and respectfully, academically, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, in a benevolent way. A benevolent way, being very benevolent. So this is the 5-star approach to restore, redress, revise, replenish, reclaim the common mature, benevolent community in our feelings, our thoughts, and our attitude. So we got to deal with resolving 5 learning disabilities. There are 5 learning disabilities. One is inadequacy, a feeling of not being good enough, one's inability to deal with life, self-doubt, lack of self-worth. When you have done the best you could in life, experiences continually to beat you down. I understand that. And you ask yourself the question, am I good enough? Then we deal with another learning disability, alienation, a lack of sympathy, interest, and enthusiasm. One loses ambition, his drive for his development, his growth, his maturity for change. When one's environment has become ill-nurtured, uncultivated, hostile, and non-caring, he or she will be more likely to take on that identity of the environment. No one cares, so why should I? I understand that. These are 5 learning disabilities that Common Humanity also wants to address. Give root cause analysis, conciliatory healing, conflict, character resolve, conflict resolution, esteem building, the students in matriculation, the homeless, ex-offenders, the dejected, the despised, the abandoned, the neglected, the homeless. So grievance, another learning disability grievance, there is a sense of deep-seated resentment. You know, we can agree on the surface, but beneath the surface, we're really at odds with one another because we're really at odds with oneself. So with self, we have to deal with this, the negative self-identity. Actually, I got that from Rev Mike, you know, yeah, negative self-identity. Resentment, self-hatred, and disdain. Disdainment also associated with Dr. Clark. He said we have a disdainment for ourselves. We deal with the unhealthy anger, animosity, distress, frustration, and anxiety attacks. As a result, misplaced anger is usually directed at the wrong people. That's true. Because someone says, I think Buddha, I don't know if associated with Buddha or what, or attributed to him, that anger is the punishment that we give ourselves for someone else's mistake. There must be a fitted release point. I mean, something that is suitable, an environment that is suitable, that is conducive for your growth and development. You know, as it pertains to express yourself, release the deep-seated resentment that you have. You know what I'm saying? And get it out of you. You know what I'm saying? In the best of ways. So therefore, that's when counseling comes into play, and you get the correct counseling that you need, therapy that you need to deal with it. It's resentment, self-hatred, and disdain that some of us have for ourselves. You know, one could be successful in life journey, but still he or she can have resentment for the one who helped him or her to become successful. That's another language in itself. I don't want to mention any names. So discrepancy, you know, the lack of compatibility prevents us from learning how to reason with each other sensibly and respectfully. Communicate with each other. The words we use to communicate communicate if we genuinely want to learn how to coexist with one another without conflict. Yes, we need to use the correct words to communicate with one another and learn how to coexist with one another without conflict. And it must start with self, you know, that what you're saying to yourself, you know, because the inner conversations that we have with ourselves really creates our circumstances. The circumstances makes us other than ourselves. The challenge is to live with yourself, respect yourself, to be happy with yourself. And happiness is the joy that you feel when you are in pursuit of your potential. You must become aware of it and you cultivate it, and and it becomes a realization. Then you're able to rise above any given situation, circumstances, condition. Yes. So you don't love yourself in the best of way, and you treat yourself as well as you treat others, regardless of their status in life. Because I think Dr. King says we do a disservice when we interact with one another based upon wealth, based upon one's status in life. You know, we do a disservice to ourselves. Then another learning disability is indifference, lacking importance or significance. It deals with the principle of self-acceptance. You know, you have to accept what you have, your own uniqueness. We are perfect in our own uniqueness. Each leaf or blade of grass is different. If a person doesn't appreciate or accept him or herself, they end up degrading and devaluing themselves by participating in foolish behaviors and self-destructive tendencies toward their demise, because that's what society is. It's a benefit for people who exploit you to exploit your tendencies, your human tendencies. And that is your emotions, you know, your urges. And without any logic, you know, it may be logical to them to do so, who exploit your human tendencies and your emotions. And then therefore, you that becomes a model, and you think it's justifiable to exploit the tendencies of others and the emotions of others. Yes, because you take on those sentiments and those feelings. The same thing that Alexander did when he went to Egypt. He told his generals to marry the women, that therefore the women gave birth, and the children, and maybe the women too, start taking on the sentiments and the feelings of the conquerors. And I don't want to get into stock and hand syndrome. Take on the emotions and the feelings of the captors. So yes, you know, you think on that. So resolving the 5 learning disabilities. When the individuals and the families become more understanding of each other, it equates to restoring social credibility. These are measurements here. These are measurements when they overcome the 5 learning disabilities. The first understanding, it equates to restoring social credibility. It's the equal task of restoring social credibility, which means you be about your word in the best of ways. Credible. I realize that people are capable, but they are not as dependable. So you have to be dependable. Say what you say you're gonna do. Yes. And then when another resolving the 5 learning disabilities of measurement, meant for me to be assured, or the assurance, or self-assurance, or self-acceptance. And when they come to know their tolerance level, that is a capacity training as well. But how much they can tolerate and what they can't tolerate. People have to be respectful of what a person can tolerate, what they can't tolerate. A tolerance level, better they're managing it, the tolerance level better and managing it equates to readdressing social diversity. When they come to know their tolerance level better and managing it, it equates to readdressing social diversity, which means moving from a persecuted minority to a privileged majority, which means he or she lives his life as an aspirant, because when inspiration comes down, one's aspiration goes up. That also having to do with one's drive, one's aspirations. Yes. You manage it. And then when they become an attitude control, temperance, less temperamental. You control your attitude. It equates to revising social coherency. You become more coherent, more cognitive when you control your attitude. Your vision becomes clear. Your sight comes clear. Hearing comes clear and not impaired. So, wherein, we're in it. We're in it to win it. We're in. That's why I said we're in. They display more confidence in being effective communicators. Equates to replenishing social continuity. And finally, wherein they become more respectful. So as a result, as well as self, as well as for other, equates to reclaiming social solidarity. Our mission is to promote the value of self-worth, and that is to our motto is to communicate with precision and clearer image to the world. Our mandate is to cultivate the light of knowledge that is in us all. Look over the horizon. Common humanity mission has DNA. And here is the DNA. Social cultural science is the basis of the DNA when it comes to technology or agriculture and industries. In doing so, what we hold in common is we're promoters, we're cultivating the social culture science, technology, agriculture, and industrialists. We're promoting it, we're cultivating it, and we're communicating it. And we realize that we appreciate the opportunity to be able to express that. Common humanity mission, promoters of the value of self-worth, communicated with precision and clearer image to the world through 5 channels of communication: understanding, tolerance, temperance, confidence, and respect. Social Life Rediscovery Youth Center, Life Rediscovery Center, Youth Outreach, Broken Spirit. Hopefully, the day will come when I will be able to open up a life rediscovery center and that will be able to deal with the social ills and setbacks that people have experienced in this life when it comes to the utilization of social literacy and life skills development. Social intervention program. It's also a learning institute as well, that we learn to reason from the premise, conversation, and reason with progression. I may have not articulated in the way that may not be as technically presented in a technical manner, but as you see, the elder and the child, which means that what I have done with minimum support, but have some support of others, I do it because it is in my heart. Until next time, I want to say, talk to you.